Alrighty, I believe we are now actually live. Did it go? Oh, there it is down there. All right, live video starting. I always feel like I have to trim this one because I start babbling before it starts. All right, so the question is, have you been here before? I don't know. I've never been here before. It is Wednesday Morning Live, and I am Linda Clement with ThriveParenting and Raising Parents Incorporated. I am a parenting coach, and I help parents become much better at what they do, preferably before their children have grown up and left the house. Although, you never know. Sometimes it's later than that. Oh, it looks like my mic is working. It looks like everything is go, go, go. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So brand new year, brand new year. I've been watching the new American TV series called Parent Test, where they compare, they say they're comparing parenting styles. What they're comparing is actually those individual parents. And then they're judging them, not the parents, but the style. Actually, they're judging the parents. Anyways, it's an interesting setup for discussing different parenting approaches and for having each individual parent discuss different approaches. The first thing I noticed while I was watching it is that the presenters, the two, there's a doctor, probably of psychology or something, it's not really clear, and the other host, I haven't caught on to what her credentials are, if she has any. It's very clear that they have an opinion, and they are not shy about sharing that opinion about which parents are better and which parenting styles are better. And it's all incredibly biased. It's very obviously very, very biased. I knew that the one couple was going to get removed from the possibility of the semifinals well before it actually happened. And I think the reason that happened is because they refused to show one of their pieces, one of the segments they didn't want showing because they found it too triggering. And I got to say, I'm actually going to say this again. I say this a lot. Street proofing doesn't work. And the idea that street proofing can work is dreamland. I think there are a lot of grossly inappropriate things being asked of children. They're being asked to be mature, to evaluate things like other adults, at the same time that they're usually told to respect adults across the board. There's too many conflicts involved. And the fact is, small children do not have the executive function to be able to judge a situation that they haven't encountered before. And it was an unfair test in the first place because the kids know that the camera people are on both sides of the screen. So the idea that they would respond to a different situation in the same way they did when they knew they were perfectly safe is very different than the reality. It was interesting because only one of the families performed the way they're supposed to perform, and that was just because they're never allowed to answer the door in the first place. They don't answer the door if their parents are home. They don't answer the door. It's not their door if they don't answer it, which is interesting. And I think a lot of people would say, well, of course, that would be very rude not to answer the door. Of course, you should answer the door if you're the closest person to it. And I think that's the problem with that particular test. If you haven't seen it, it is streaming live online. I found it on CTV, but it's an ABC television program. So anywhere you can stream an ABC series will be where you can go take a look at this. But I wanted to talk about street proofing in general, not just specifically this particular faked test that was supposed to tell anybody anything. The fact is, little kids, and by little kids I mean about 8. After that, they might be able to get this kind of stuff, but even 9 and 10-year-olds fail it on a regular basis. For little kids, all of the street proofing is terrorizing and not helpful because often children, when they're frightened, will pick a survival response because they're frightened and they don't really have a choice. Like, it's not like, I think I'll choose to be a tree or, collapse into a rock or freak out and run away, or they don't have a choice. Their body decides for them. And it's based on a lot of factors that nobody is in control of, certainly not any explaining that was done to them at a different time. One of the pieces of research that I ran across a long time ago about street proofing was that you could do a street proofing lesson with practice and everything, very last thing in a school day. And 10 minutes after school gets out, every child that was approached by a stranger did exactly what the stranger asked them to do. Even if the scenario that the stranger asked them was exactly what they had just been taught. This information doesn't get absorbed by children. It's why children need supervision. It's because they're children and they are incapable of making a rational or reasonable choice about a friendly looking stranger who asks them for help. Because they're supposed to be helpful. It's like the biggest thing in our culture is making sure the children are helpful. They need to help the adults. That message that goes on all the time about kids needing to be helpful and needing to be respectful and needing to be polite means that the first adult that approaches them and doesn't seem to be creepy or scary will get whatever they ask for. And if anybody thinks that's not the case, I invite you to look at the evidence because the research has been very clear. This is not something you can teach children to do. You can teach 11-year-olds to do it. Absolutely. Maybe. 9, possibly. 6, not a chance. Now, I understand that there's the real world, and this real world has been around for a really long time. Back in the olden days, in England and most of Europe, the purpose of most fairy tales, especially the scary ones, was to be warnings for kids. Don't go with the strangers in the woods. Don't open the door. It'll be a wolf. Like the bad guy stories about what horrible things happen to children who don't listen or horrible things that happen to children who don't come when they're called. All those kinds of things are designed to terrify children into behaving and being safe. And it didn't work any better than either. One of the statistics that was shared in the parent test is that 2,300, I think was the number. It was something, it might have been 3,200. There was 2s and 3s and 100 at the end. It was an astonishingly high number of children go missing in the United States every day. Now, I was expecting to say every year. We cannot rely on children's abilities to handle strange situations, unfamiliar situations, in a moment of pressure, and a strange authority figure is always a moment of pressure for a child. We cannot hope that they will handle that well. They need supervision. It's not an if, it's not a what, it's not a when. They need supervision. They need to be able to look at the adult and say, what about this? They need to see the adult react to these situations. And if the adult reacts to these situations with, go get the door, oh yeah, that's fine. This isn't helpful. This isn't instructive. Going to the door with the child and saying, do we know this person? Do we answer the door to people we don't know? Well, if it's the gas company, there would be a gas company car out there. I didn't call the gas company, and I don't believe there's a leak because we actually have a leak detection system in our house. Or we didn't call the cable guy. There's no reason for the cable guy to come in the house. They can do everything from the outside. Like, processing, does the authority figure get through in front of them? Because one of the things that I was going to say, when a child is responding in fear to a stranger, especially a stranger that looks like an authority figure, one of the things they might do is fawning, which is smiling and being happy and pleasing them and doing whatever it is they want, because that's their survival instinct, and nobody can talk them out of it. You cannot train a child out of an instinct. It's not possible. You can confuse them. You can give them mixed messages, like you have to be respectful of adults and strangers and don't do what adults and strangers tell you to do. There's no way for a kid to evaluate those conversations. So watch the parent test if you'd like. I don't think it's particularly instructive of anything. It's interesting listening to them talk about their different strategies and the way that they handle different things. The dogma of the routine is necessary for children to feel safe is very alive and well, built into the entire bias of everything. However, I would just like to remind people, while we're talking about street proofing and stranger danger, it is not information children can absorb. It's not information they can use when they're afraid, and they require supervision until they're old enough not to require supervision. And that's all. So this one was very long because apparently I have a big rant about this. Join me every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific live for who knows what kind of conversation.